or you can, share them with friends if you think somebody else might benefit who's not able to make it. You can let them know.
What's it under?
It's on the YouTube channel that I have, which is it's an indecipherable code of numbers and letters, but I can give you the link, so all you'd have to do is go there, and there's all the videos, along with the and I don't think I mentioned that last week, but along with the videos of these talks that we have after the meditation, there's the basic meditation practice that we all do. That's on there as well. It's just posted under basic practice, basic meditation, something like that. So you can do that same practice, and some people find that helpful. I've had a few people comment that they use that before bed. They use it as their kind of, they get into bed and then they kind of go through that, and that's their unwinding process, and they're finding it helpful in sleeping. So that's wonderful. I've had a few people share that. Neat thing. So one of the other things that probably everybody experiences over the course of that simple basic meditation is that you are focusing on probably your breath at the time, and you will be distracted by a sound somewhere out in the building. There's different activities going on here, so you become aware of these sounds. And so there's a part of the mind that leaves the awareness of the breath and it moves to the sound, curious about it. What is that sound? Where did it come from? Maybe you're not going through all these things, subvocally in that way, but your attention is drawn to it. And sometimes there's a reaction to the sound, like, I wish that sound wasn't there, or they should be quiet, or something like that. You notice that in the reaction to the sound, sometimes there's a feeling of being kind of agitated or upset by the reaction to it. And then you remember, oh, I'm just going to observe the breath. You don't really do anything with the sound. You don't do anything about the sound. But when you draw your attention back to your breath, to the object of meditation, you've kind of let go of the reaction. You didn't have to do anything with it. It just went away. And so that's kind of this natural, returning to the calm stability of the body and the way the mind is, the natural clarity and calmness and quiet of the mind, when you're not sort of pumping it full of things to distract you or to be interested in. Last week we were talking about, among other things, we were talking about kind of the sense we have of self, of the ego self, and how sometimes, while the ego isn't a bad thing, we all sort of have this recognition that the ego is kind of a little more of the problematic side of our being. And I was thinking about it today, and I just jotted down the note that the ego is the way we remind ourselves of all of the things that are wrong with life and with ourselves. And we do that by kind of saying, is this what I want? Is this what I want right now? Is this something I don't want? Is this something I don't want? And it's interesting, when you just start to let go of that strong identification with that I thought, that is this what I want, or is this something that's important to me, or something I dislike? If you just start to let go of that a little bit, kind of like releasing tension, just sort of let it go. You're not renouncing it or saying, I don't exist. It's not that. You're just sort of letting go of that strong attachment to that sense of I, that things around you start to soften up. You're still there, but kind of the uptightness or the agitation about what's happening, it's softened a little bit. So it's kind of like that experience of the mind going to a sound and starting to react to the sound. And in that reaction to the sound is, what do I want? What does I think of the sound? Should that sound be there? Should they be quiet? Are they being, noisy, disrespectful? What is it, right? So we are reacting. It's that sense of I, that strong sense of I. So you're not trying to banish that, but you notice. It's just that, just softening that grip a little bit, just releasing it a little. And what does it feel like? It feels so good. It just feels pleasant. So I wanted to kind of ease into this week's discussion by just sort of sharing that little bit of closure on that thought of the ego. So letting go, and just one final note on here, letting go of that strong association with I for just a moment really changes the way it feels to be, even if the circumstances remain just as they were. So in other words, thank you for passing those out, by the way. So even if the circumstances are exactly the same, something has changed. The way you're reacting to those circumstances has changed. And so that it feels a little softer. It doesn't feel like that sharpness of kind of us against the world, us fighting, us wanting things, us not wanting other things. That seems to loosen up a little. Gives us a little room to kind of maneuver. So tonight, I wanted to go a little deeper into discussion about this meditation practice that we're doing. And this is probably great timing because we do have some newer folks with us. One of the things that I think is important to share, though, too, is that the message that comes along with this is it's a fairly simple message. We might talk about it in all sorts of different ways so that we can wrap our heads around it. But really the message is kind of this, is that there's nothing wrong with any of you. There's nothing wrong with us. We're not broken people. We're not damaged goods. Sometimes we have this idea that, I need to fix things about myself, or that there's things that are wrong with me, but that's really not true. What we have is moments where we experience suffering and difficulty, and there are moments where we don't experience that. And there are ways to access the non-suffering part, and to be able to do that more and more routinely. And so that's kind of the simple message of this practice, is that you're able to go there, and it doesn't require a religious conversion, and it doesn't require, anything really special other than a willingness to try it and some strong determination to kind of stay focused on it. So with that, just kind of beginning with, everyone, there's nothing wrong with any of us. It's just a matter of getting in touch with the authentic nature within us. Kind of like what is our experience of being when that I part of us isn't shouting in our ears, metaphorically. When that part of us isn't saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, this is wrong, that's wrong, I want this, I don't want that, I'm afraid of this, I'm angry about that. If you just let go of that, what is the truth of your experience without that narrator kind of always going on in the background? What does it feel like to just be present without that? And that's kind of what lies within us. It feels good. That's what we feel when we meditate. So just to read a few things off of this handout for tonight, the mind's natural state is one of awareness and clarity. The state of awareness has a feeling tone accompanying it, which is pleasant, even joyful. And you experience that pleasant, joyful awareness during meditation practice. The body scan that we do, that's called samatha, and that just means calm abiding. calm abiding, and you kind of get that. You know, you move through the body and there's calm abiding. The breathing meditation, where we're focused on this triangular area, that is called Anapanasati, which means awareness of respiration. Ana, the first part of that, it's a Pali word, an, that means in-breath. Apana means out-breath, and sati means awareness, mindfulness. So anapanasati is essentially awareness of in and out breathing. It's like the literal translation of it. So that's what we're doing, and we're aware of all of those sort of subtleties of the movement of the breath. But with these simple meditation practices, we're quieting both the body and the mind. And although sometimes it's difficult to settle into meditation initially, it takes you, maybe a few minutes to kind of calm down. Most people find that each moment spent meditating makes the next moment of meditation easier and more peaceful. So we often share a little phrase here, which is this moment of consciousness sets the stage for the next moment of consciousness. So if you think about that, consciousness for us, it's not really starting and stopping, but there's kind of this constant unfolding of consciousness. This moment of consciousness is kind of unfolding into the next moment of consciousness. We've all had the experience of having something go wrong in kind of a frustrating way, maybe something simple. You spill your coffee and the next second the phone rings and you pick it up and it's like, hello, you're a little, and it's nothing against the person that you're talking to, but you're sort of bringing whatever your state of consciousness was in the last moment, you're bringing it into this moment. So you kind of carry over this consciousness from moment to moment. There's a term for it, and I use a lot of Pali terms, and that's just because that was the original translation of all these teachings about 2,600 years ago, was done in the Pali language, and so I reference a lot of these terms and try and use the best English equivalent for them. But there's this concept, which is really what we just discussed or described, which is samvatanika vijnana, which just means evolving consciousness. One moment spent fueling thoughts of anger or ill will becomes the next moment of consciousness. And that will be full of anger and ill will, like spilling the coffee on your desk and then answering the phone. Or stubbing your toe and then, a family member is right around the corner, and so you kind of extend that frustration or that anger or that stubbed toe feeling to the next person. Conversely, one moment spent cultivating thoughts of kindness and compassion becomes the next moment of consciousness, full of kindness and compassion. So this process, samvatanika vijnana, and the name of it isn't really important in Pali, but it is this evolution of consciousness. It's all volitional, which means that we can control it. But it often happens as if it's an autopilot. Our thoughts seem like they govern themselves. But with the right type of observation, we can see how thoughts are really an ongoing stream. Each one is influenced by the one before it. This one is going to influence the next one. And then this one is going to influence the next one. So with the right type of observation, we can see how thoughts are really an ongoing stream, and we can see how this moment of consciousness, in this moment of consciousness, or this moment of consciousness is born from the seeds of the last. Simple objective observation is the best way to learn about this process. And we all just spent about a half an hour doing just that. Becoming aware of, yeah,
origin of Pali? Where does that derive from?
That is from India. So India, and my understanding of it is that,
The guru.
yeah, well, about 2,600 years ago, there was no written language in India. It was all a spoken language. And soon after that, these teachings were written down. They were transcribed. And that word Pali, it actually means text. And so it's like the written word. And then it also, and this was kind of in the northern part of India, which is now also like Nepal and that area. And then in the southern part of India, the language evolved into Sanskrit, and so it was recorded in Sanskrit. So these are two different languages that are really describing the same set of teachings. So it's kind of a neat thing in that one of the things you find as you read through the teachings is a lot of them start with the phrase, "Thus I have heard," or essentially, "I heard it this way." And the reason that they start that way is because originally there was no written form of the language. It was memorized over and over and over, and that's why in a lot of the teachings there's a certain rhythm to it, because it was recited over and over and over. Sort of like the idea of a mantra, something that you repeat over and over.
So it's more like a philosophical texting, more so than, everyday.
Well, no, it's truly a written language. Now in India there are so many different languages that are spoken. I did a retreat with a gentleman who he spoke fluently. I think it was something like 6 different languages. But it was almost as if, like, if you went to Wisconsin, you'd speak the Wisconsin language, and then if you went to Minnesota, you'd speak that language, and that many of the words were common, but there'd be some differences, And but because of the way India is set up, there's all these different provinces, all these different states that were once very isolated, and so they have these kind of different languages. So in some ways, Pali and Sanskrit are kind of like the Latin. The way a lot of the European texts and philosophies come from Latin, and languages come from Latin. These Indian languages come from the Pali and the Sanskrit. So probably more than anybody wanted to know.
Yeah, I found it interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, I think that stuff is kind of cool, and it is sort of. I always wondered about that. Yeah, it always begins with, "Thus I have heard." Wonder why that is. Kind of curious about that. Then later on through research found that out. But this observation, we all spent about 30 minutes in that direct observation of what was taking place. That as we soften ourselves up, as we release our tension, as we become comfortable in our bodies and just move through with objective awareness, some of the stuff we normally call pain or a problem in our body, we try and just, that's a sensation. And can I allow it to be there and give it space to be as it is? Because it is there. So fighting it isn't going to change it. Judging it isn't going to change it. Can I just leave it as it is? Can I coexist with that for this time? For this time while I'm meditating. And we see that our reaction to it changes our experience of it. Our relationship to it changes our experience. The breath, which we use as really the primary thing in this Anapanasati, breathing meditation, it's unique among all of the critical functions in the human body, the critical functions, in that we can control it. But at the same time, it's involuntary. So we go to sleep, you might be controlling your breath all the way up until you doze off, and then your breath becomes natural. It does its own thing. It's involuntary. You can hold your breath for a period of time, but eventually you'd probably, faint, and then your body would take over. You'd start breathing again. You can alter your breath, but at the same time, it's involuntary. So it is, in the tradition, it's said to be a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. So we have this tool that's always with us, the breath. And that's one of the reasons that I like to use the breath in meditation practice, rather than, there are some meditations that we do sometimes where you can visualize something, or you can imagine something. Or you can even repeat a mantra over and over, which nothing wrong with those things, but sometimes you don't have the clarity of mind to imagine something, or you don't have the wherewithal to really recite a mantra. But your breath is always here, and everywhere you go, it's with you. And so if you can begin to get in the habit of being aware of it, being mindful of your breath, you can really start to use it to transform the way you feel all the time, not just in meditation. So whenever something, and here I use the word unwholesome, arises in the mind. And by unwholesome, it could be, you think of something that, you have an image of something that is worrying you, right? Maybe you're concerned about somebody's health, or you're concerned about something, right? And there's just this moment of it flashes in your mind. You become aware of that, just momentarily. And maybe it's not a real obvious thing that you're aware of it, but nevertheless you're aware of it. If anything unwholesome arises in your mind, anything troublesome, anything difficult, the breath becomes irregular. And it's interesting. If you start to try and monitor that, you discover it's true. If you're having difficulty putting batteries in a remote, and you're starting to get frustrated, if you tune into your breath, it's not regular anymore. Your breath is shallower, or you're holding your breath momentarily. Something has changed in the natural flow of the breath. It's really amazing. I mean, if you start to look, it's like, yeah, sure enough. Something happens, I'm thinking about something that's worrying me, and kind of in those spontaneous moments, and so check in with your breath, and sure enough, the breath is shallow, you're holding your breath, it's not regular. Or one of the things that I notice in me when it happens is that I tend to breathe in what seems like the upper quarter of my lungs, It's not full breath anymore, it's like up here. It's almost like throat breathing, top of the chest breathing. That's been kind of my experience. But everyone experiences sort of, respiration changes whenever there's something difficult in the mind, unpleasant, frightening, unwholesome. Unwholesome is a good word, because wholesome just means anything that's good for you, or beneficial, or helpful, for body or mind. That's kind of the definition of wholesome. So wholesome is just, the unwholesome is the opposite of that. So that's a little challenge to you, to see if you can remember that from time to time. Just check in and see if your breath is not irregular in some way. Now you can use the quality of your respiration as a physical signal. You can become aware of unwholesome mental states which might otherwise go unnoticed. And this is helpful because for a lot of people, if you say, be aware of your emotional state, or be aware of your state of mind, or what your thoughts are at any given time, that's a tough one to do, because if you're focusing on your thoughts, it's almost like you're fanning the flames a little bit, or the mind has a real tendency to wander. So you can take a different approach, which is to become aware of your breath. In the same way that we were aware of it as we were doing this meditation, but just as you're doing normal things. You're folding laundry, but you're aware of your breath. You're doing dishes, but you're aware of your breath. Mindfulness of the breath. So using the quality of your respiration as a physical signal. And by quality, I just mean, is it regular or are you restricting it in some way? Is it shorter? Are you holding it? Is it tighter? Or is it just sort of natural? Natural the way it might be if you were laying down in your bed to go to sleep, and your breath is pretty natural at that point in time. So using that respiration as a physical signal, you can become aware of any unwholesome mental states which might otherwise go unnoticed. And as I say, it's easier to maintain this sort of soft awareness of the breath than it is to be aware of your emotions and your mental state, and it's easier to do it as you're just performing normal tasks. So that is the idea of using the breath as a teacher. And the next one is using the breath as a healer. So like the old question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You might wonder, is the breath caused to be irregular by the thoughts or the difficult emotions, or are the difficult emotions caused by the change in the breath? But the neat thing about the breath, and this really does work, if you realize the breath has become irregular because you're thinking about something difficult, something stressful, something that makes you afraid, you become aware that the breath is irregular, tight, shallow. Focus on making the breath regular, making the breath full, and being mindful of the breath. And that will start to change whatever that state of mind was. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's rather than worrying about retooling your mind and all the things you're thinking about, if you can just be mindful of the breath, as soon as the breath gets off kilter, be aware, what's my state of mind? Well, I'm worried about something. I'm agitated, I'm irritated, I'm fearful, whatever it is. Focus on restoring the breath to normal flow. Breathe fully. Breathing in, I am aware that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. Breathing in, be aware of the full in-breath. Breathing out, be aware of the full out-breath. Be aware of the touch of the breath, the sensations within the breath. Just like we practice. And you can do that not sitting on a meditation cushion, and it will transform whatever your state of mind is at that time. It's really amazing. And I know, Darla, you had experiences with this where you would just be, maybe in a difficult meeting or something like that, and
Yep.
you'd be able to utilize that.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's particular time got quite heated, and real quickly it was 0 to 100 just like that. And I could at first, you sense that in your body as you like almost somebody kicks you in the guts, and have that whole rush of heat or whatever goes over you. And I noticed that, and the first thing I did, I felt my heart race, and then I just took in a real deep breath and let it out, another one, and let it out. And within 3 breaths, I was back to totally normal, which is really a really neat experience. The rest of the room was still going on at 100, but I had my body, back to normal. But
Yeah, it's amazing how that simple practice can really just restore you. So, and yeah, breathe, So, yeah, just give that a try as you're going about your day.
and another good time, you're driving, something comes along and you slam on your brakes, you feel that jolt, and then you really quit breathing. I mean, you really do. And to remember to just start breathing again, really deep breaths, and you'll be able to drive home without any more incidences.
So it's real simple. It's just if you're aware of your breathing, you're mindful of your breath, just your natural inflow and outflow of breath, just like in meditation, it becomes quite centering, quite soothing. It just sort of helps calm you. You feel more balanced, and you get in the habit of doing that, checking in with your breath more and more often. It feels very natural, and it's not like a cumbersome or a contrived thing. You may remind yourself to do it from time to time, but it starts to become really natural. And so then, as Darla shared, yeah, when something difficult comes up, then your habit starts to become mindfulness of the breath, breathing in, breathing out, rather than reacting. So you're focusing on this, and you're making sure that your breath stays regular and normal. And that kind of ties back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is this moment of consciousness sets the stage for the next moment of consciousness. Oftentimes, that's all it takes. A couple of breaths is all it takes to sort of interrupt that flow of reaction in the mind. That when that stuff comes up, maybe you're in a heated, meeting with someone and there's disagreement, and you're, starting to get angry and frustrated. Normal human stuff. Normally, the next moment is going to be a reaction to what was in this moment. More anger, more frustration, whatever it is. Sometimes raising voices, how things go. But if you become aware, start to observe the breath, full in breath, full out breath, that is sufficient to just create enough space there so that the next moment of consciousness is based on breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. It's super simple, really, but it takes, it takes a little practice, and it takes a little discussion. But this is what Anapanasati is: breathing meditation. Now, the Anapanasati Sutta, and I have to thank you, Cheryl, for reminding me, because you actually brought this up last week. I had shared this a couple of years ago, I suppose, but this is one of the original Pali texts on breathing meditation, and so this is very much what we're doing in the practice of breathing meditation. And so it's very much the experience of breathing meditation. So it's not necessarily something you need to recite. However, you can use it as a tool, like maybe at bedtime, if you're trying to relax or you're sitting down at some point during the day. It can be very helpful to just read through this and kind of follow it. So I won't read through the whole thing now because I want to allow a little time for some questions and some other things, but just a few examples. And again, this is very much what we did. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. And breathing out, I know I am breathing out. And if you do that, again, don't let it be sort of a mindless, you're just sort of reciting the words but not feeling the feeling. Use those words to really center you in the feeling. So when you say that, if you're reciting it or if you're reading it as part of your meditation or just practicing it, really feel it. Don't just say the words. Breathing in a long breath. I know I'm breathing in a long breath. So if it's long, you know. And if it's a short breath, you know. You're aware of it. There's no judgment. It's just awareness. So breathing in a short breath, I'm aware that I am breathing in a short breath, or I know that I'm breathing in a short breath. Breathing in, I am aware of my whole body. And breathing out, I'm aware of my whole body. This is what we're doing, is cultivating this awareness of the body, just as it is. Breathing in, I calm my whole body. Breathing out, I calm my whole body. And we do that. We can do that. Breathing in, I feel joyful. Breathing out, I feel joyful. That's another funny thing about this practice, is even though it's so simple, we're just sitting, breathing, we're just paying attention to our own breath as it is, Nothing magic, nothing special. There is just sort of a feeling of joyfulness to it, you know? Just a real, wow, this is nice. Breathing in, I feel happy. Breathing out, I feel happy. And a couple here too that I want to hit just to make sure I explain them. Breathing in, I am aware of my mental formations. That's just a way of saying those volitional thoughts. Breathing in, I'm aware of what my thoughts are. I see them. I'm aware of them. I notice them. I'm aware of my volitional thoughts. Breathing out, I calm my mental formations, my volitional thoughts. The original word was mental formations. The original word was sankhara, but translation, mental formations. Breathing out, I calm my mental formations. And we all did that. During the meditation, sounds happened, distractions happened in the physical body, aches, pains, mind was wandering, thinking about something. You just brought your awareness back to the breath, calmed your mental formations. So this is what we did, all laid out in detail. Breathing in, I make my mind happy. Breathing out, I make my mind happy. Can you do that? Yeah. Try suggesting it, just a little. You know, it's not like you're talking yourself into it, but just suggest. Can I make my mind happy? Can I allow my mind to be happy? Breathing in, I allow my mind to be happy. Breathing out, I allow my mind to be happy. And you continue here. Breathing, another one I want to focus on is breathing in, I observe the impermanent nature of all dharmas. Dharmas just means phenomena. You observe how everything is impermanent. My thoughts are impermanent. My worries are impermanent. I mean, they might come a lot, but they're impermanent. They come and go. My breath comes and goes. The days come and go. Experiences come and go. Everything is impermanent. So I'm aware of that. I'm aware of the impermanence of all things. The awareness of impermanence is helpful because it reminds us that difficult stuff, it isn't going to last forever. And pleasant, wonderful things, they aren't going to last forever either. And so they're worth really savoring, you know. So when you see something wonderful, you just try and grab it. And then you can start practicing this more and more. I had a couple of things today that I just got silly joy from. There was a woman who rode past the house when I was putting my stuff in the trunk to come here. She rode past the house on a motor scooter, and she just sort of had these big funny goggles on. In every other way, she was just dressed like a normal person, but she had these big funny goggles on. You know, and it's just like, you know, normally you see stuff like that, and it's kind of like, I'm in a hurry, I gotta go here, I gotta go there, you know, big deal. But it's sort of like, let yourself notice things, and let yourself just be sort of, you know, let yourself experience joy over simple things that are just sort of fleeting, you know. It's like, wow, 1 in a million shot that I just saw that, and there it was, you know. And then on the way here, I was driving, and I saw a young guy jogging, really skinny young guy, and he just had this huge beard. It was like down to here. And it was like wonderful, you know. It's like, thank you, I got to see that. It seems silly, but you really start to savor these experiences because they're impermanent, and you just get this one, you know, there they are.
See the one guy directing traffic in front of the Diamond Fresh all the time?
Yes, that's an experience too. Yep.
Don't make eye contact.
Yeah, and that can be joyful. So that's a little bit about the impermanence. I want to leave it here because I want to have some time for questions, and I'm going to stop the recording at this time.